Welcome to the Mojo for Musicians podcast from Manny Cabo Media, where we dig deep into today's top strategies to help you take your music career to the next level with real, raw, and uplifting conversations with industry professionals that are making moves, making a difference, and making the best versions of themselves to inspire you to do the same. What's going on, everybody? I'm your host, Manny Cabo, and welcome to another episode of Mojo for Musicians. All right, Mojo Maniacs, welcome back. And I got to tell you, I'm beyond grateful for all your amazing ratings and reviews. And above all, the support that you're giving the show. It's truly humbling, and I'm just happy that I could keep inspiring and making a difference in musicians' lives far and wide. So just remember to keep subscribing so you don't miss any updates. And remember, guys, the more people that know about the show, the more I can help. So again, continue to spread the word. All right, so let's talk about today's episode, which to me is at the summit of my personal ambitions when it comes to doing anything artistically, and that's the topic of mastery. So let's ask the obvious question here. Why is mastery so important in anything that we do? And trust me, this is a loaded question in that there are so many variables to consider, and I'm going to do the best job that I can to outline what, in my opinion, are the most crucial reasons why we as artists, producers, musicians, you name it, should strive to master our craft. And today's guest is truly the poster boy for having mastered his percussion skills. And I can't tell you how honored I was to share the stage with this beast of a percussionist while I was on The Voice. So before I bring him on, let's dive into this juicy episode that I titled, Mastery Makes Magic in Music. And mastery essentially makes magic in any calling, for that matter, or profession in this world, especially in the entertainment industry, where billions are consistently hypnotized by words and by performances. You truly feel the power and can certainly reap the rewards in all aspects, from building your network, integrity, and the big one, the financial success. How about that? So let me highlight some of the favorite reasons to master your craft. And I'm going to commence this little list of mine with a fabulous and complimenting quote, because I love quotes that I certainly believe to be true. And it goes a little something like this. The happiness of a man in this life does not consist in the absence, but in the mastery of his passions. And that was Alfred Lord Tennyson. Well, one thing's for sure, there's no kind of mincing of words in that one. And it basically states that mastering your craft can only bring happiness. And I'll add success to that one because it's true. I've witnessed it from fellow artists and lived it in my own journeys. And it's obvious why the majority of we artists and humans as a whole never reach that plateau is because, dude, it's hard work. It literally takes 10,000 hours to become an expert at anything. And I know many of us don't believe in being perfect, including myself, because you're putting way too much pressure on yourself. And inevitably, you set yourself up for failure instead of being passionate. Because for me, passion in whatever conditions or whatever you're doing motivates us. It keeps us committed. And passion alone is not enough, but coupled with knowledge and commitment will certainly allow us to truly discover what we're made of. And let's keep it real. If it's something you chose and doing it for the rest of your life, then why not be in the ranks of the best? I mean, it makes perfect sense. But please, whatever you do, don't just relish in the results, but savor that journey that it took to get you there. Because if you have that mentality, then mastery at that point just becomes inevitable, at least for me anyway. Reason one for mastering your craft is an obvious one, I think. Basically, your stock rises, meaning you become that much more marketable. And with more market presence comes more opportunities. And in an industry where word of mouth is at the zenith of importance, trust me, it's in your best interest to be on top of your game. I always compare it to my days living in Nashville, where the tenants of the town harbor on this whole idea that it's a huge but little town at the same time. In other words, everyone knows who's in the game. And I mean everyone, like the slackers, the flakes, the pros,
which is where you want to be to get any exposure and, above all, gigs. My personal philosophy has always been this. I always want to be that person that no one ever has to worry about. And if you live by that principle, then you'll always have a gig, or at least the highest probability of it. Believe me, because I truly believe that we all, and I mean all, have a spot out there that's up for grabs, but you got to claim it. Reason number 2, the confidence factor, right? That makes everything easy. People, hello, the old adage still holds true. Practice makes perfect. And as I alluded to earlier, the closer you are to perfecting your skills, then the higher the confidence and the less you worry about delivering a great performance, which makes perfect sense. Here's a personal anecdote for you. Like, I once had to learn 9 songs for a set at last minute with only 5 days to rehearse. I didn't know the songs, but I tell you what, as soon as I said yes to the gig, I downloaded the songs along with the lyrics, of course, and searched for instrumental versions just so when I had the lyrics comfortably down, I could test my recall skills, And for the next 5 days, I ate, slept, and worked those songs to death. I must have listened to each song 100 times. And I know we singers out there learning songs have been here before. But I tell you what, after that performance, I became the lead singer of one of the most successful cover bands here in New Jersey for about 2 years. Believe me, when you put in the work also puts you in. Just like that relief pitcher in the 9th that wants the ball to end the game. Of course they're going to put you in there. Sorry, I had to throw a baseball reference in there, being that it was my life for so many years. In fact, check this out. I got a little anecdote here for you. I was cut from the team for 2 years in a row. And I worked my ass off that summer on pitching, and I mean studied tapes, watched documentaries of the best pitchers, you name it, Roger Clemens, Nolan Ryan at the time. And to make a long story short, not only did I come back the next year, made the team, but I led the league in strikeouts. Strikeouts per game with 10, became the MVP, and led the team to the finals. And that's not to boast at all, guys. All right, maybe a little. But again, the point I'm trying to make is that you got to put in the work. And here's a tough pill to swallow. If you are not, and I repeat, if you're not where you want to be right now, it's because you need to put in more hours. You're not ready. Because believe me, when you're ready, the opportunities will come in leaps and bounds. And like my boy Isaac Newton said, I love this quote as well, action builds inspiration. And not the other way around. Hear me say that again. Action builds inspiration, not the other way around. Finally, number 3, that ultimate feeling of, yes, gratification and fulfillment is just priceless. When you know you've realized the fruits of your labor and, the planets are all aligned and your creative journey falls into place, that's when you know this is what you were meant to do because nothing else makes sense. And you close your eyes and you see yourself crushing it with no ambivalence, no hesitation, and above all, no doubts, These are the moments that you realize your blood, sweat, and tears finally paid off. And they only happen on your journey to mastery. And the beauty about it all is that there is always something to learn and someone to learn it from. So go out, make your own magic, guys. Seriously, because it's the best. So don't rest on your laurels. And just keep growing. All right. So when we come back, we're going to talk to someone who has undeniably put in the hours to reach the pinnacle of all his current successes. So stick around because I've got a great one for you.
You're listening to the Mojo for Musicians podcast. To learn more about becoming a guest on the show to share your mojo with us, visit mannycabo.com and send us an email in the contact section. Also, don't forget to subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcast app so you don't miss any future episodes. And if you like what you hear, be sure to give us a positive review on your favorite listening platform. And now, back to the show.
All right, Mojo Maniacs, welcome back. And I got to tell you, I am so stoked to talk to this cat because not only did I share the stage with him and completely blown away by his own mastery behind the kit, he's been the house band drummer for multiple major network TV shows, including CBS's Rockstar Supernova, Rockstar in Excess, ABC's American Idol, and of course, fully tenured with NBC's The Voice. And that's not all. No, it's not. He's even toured and performed. I mean, crushed it with the likes of Miley Cyrus, Vanessa Carlton, Natalie Cole, Shaka Khan. I had to. I'm sorry. I just had to do that. But anyway, dude, he's even brought the house down all right. When I read this, I just couldn't believe it. You know, when you share the stage with somebody like Madonna or, say, Paul Stanley of Kiss, I mean, where the hell do you go from there with respect to showmanship? Ladies and gentlemen, here he is live with me on Mojo for Musicians, the one and only Nate Morton. What's up, Nate? Welcome to the show, brother.
What's up, MC? How are you? That was quite an introduction.
Well, listen, it's all about you, man. It's out there. I'm not making that up. That's actually legitimate.
Well, yes, it basically means that I'm old. It basically means I've done a bunch of stuff because I'm old and I've been around a long time. But hey, that's saying something in itself. So
exactly.
I
was going to ask you, dude, are you sure it's you on the other line? Because and it's not like a clone. Because man, you get around, and I mean like Beach Boy status get around. So it's good to have you. So if you want to date yourself, there you go. For any of you guys out there that remember the Beach Boys, anyway. Well, listen. In all honesty, you're truly the perfect person to compliment this episode because you've undoubtedly mastered your craft, my man. And I know because I was there, when I was rocking Here I Go Again with you, and I had to turn around and thank you and Mark and the rest of the guys for killing it with me, brother. So how you been?
I've been really well, Manny. I've been really well. I mean, not to immediately jump into sort of the craziness going on in the world today, but I've been very fortunate that throughout this craziness, we've continued to maintain production on The Voice and continue to make good content. Sometimes we had to actually, in season 18, we had to actually finish the season remotely. But then coming back and beginning production on season 19, we've been able to work together and sort of be in the same room under obviously specific guidelines and so on. But the end result is that I am very fortunate to continue to work, and I'm very fortunate to continue to remain healthy and safe and all of that. So I've been really well, man. I've been really well. Can't say much more beyond that.
No, that's fantastic. It wasn't one of my questions actually, but I have to ask. Like, you just basically mentioned that you finished the season last year, which I remember correctly. How was that? How was that transition? It must have been like, wow, this is so weird.
I mean, well, you just took the words right out of my mouth. I mean, it was very, I mean, I hate to say weird because I record in my home and I do have a studio here where I record. Right. So that aspect of it wasn't so much weird. But it was just I missed, for obvious, reasons, I miss being in a room with my buddies and making music together,
Of course.
And it's an interesting thing because, as you know, and as any musician, performer knows, studio is different to live in the sense that when you're live, you tend to go for things because it's kind of like that feeling of like, hey, if I mess it up, it's gone. So what? Right. Whereas when you track, there's that, for me anyway, there's that danger of playing it too safe. Mm-hmm. And then it starts to sound like, like a boring, robotic, right, exactly. Or you're just trying to get it done or whatever. So I had to continually sort of challenge myself to make sure that I still quote unquote went for it, but it was wearing a different hat. Mm-hmm. And I'm glad that I wore that hat during that time that I did it. But I'm also okay if I don't have to wear that hat again. That is to say, us recording the TV show remotely.
No, I could relate, man, because I got to tell you, and I know you're going to agree with me, the weirdest thing, especially here when I'm doing my lives, and I finish a song, it's like you're done, you're rocking out, you're all into it, and then you stop. There's like nothing. It's like, nothing. Right. So that's kind of an awkward feeling, and I'm sure it must feel the same way for the contestants because there is no audience. You can't thrive off that ambience, and I get it.
Well, and it's interesting too. I just want to point out, by the way, I love recording at home. So I'm not eschewing home recording by any stretch. I record drums on tracks here at the house all the time. I just mean in the sense that, yes, shifting gears and doing a show like The Voice, where you're accustomed to being in a TV soundstage with, people around you and getting that, as you just pointed out, that immediate feedback.
Absolutely.
You finish the song, bang, and there's an immediate crowd response.
Sure.
So yeah, having to generate that momentum by myself sitting in a room recording drums is a different sort of thing.
I know. Plus, I'm a homebody anyway, so me working at home, my studio's here, so I'm kind of accustomed to it. So I completely get it, man. I had to ask because it isn't the norm, and it's something that we're all trying to transition to, or at least get accustomed to. And I know it can be a little awkward and sometimes overwhelming, as I speak to some musicians, in my other podcasts, that we were forced to learn this new software, new protocols, and that could be a little alarming. So yeah, man, kudos to you. I'm just fortunate. Hey, yeah, go ahead.
I want to shift gears. I'm gonna jump like right into the weeds. So
look at this. Go for it, please.
You mentioned being a homebody and so on.
Yeah.
And so my wife said to me last night, she said, "Oh, what are you doing tomorrow? What's this thing that says here, chat with Manny Cabo?" And I go, "Oh, well, Manny Cabo, he's a contestant on the show, da da da." And so I search up some pictures of you, to send to her to show. She's in the bedroom with one of the kids, and I'm texting her. So I come across these pictures, and do you have a you mentioned being a homebody. Do you have a home gym as well as a home studio, Manny?
I do. Because I'm looking at it right now.
Because you're looking like freaking Atlas.
Dude, I'm a far cry from that, man. That trust me, that's very humbling. But yeah, no, absolutely not. Not right now.
I was like, I don't know if I'm fit enough to talk to this dude.
Dude, I put on some quarantine pounds too, man, and that's being kind. Trust me. So I've got to get my butt back on the treadmill. But yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
Sure.
So listen, you already know the format of my show, and I'm just going to present you with a few set of questions that I feel best showcase your background and what you do. And I'll get a little personal, but only to address and give rise to those questions that we musicians want to know, to help guide us, on the right path, and more importantly, to never abandon our passions. So let's dive into question number one, right? All right. So since the topic of this episode has to do with mastering your craft, what would you say were your most imperative, learning lessons in mastering the drums? In other words, were there specific moments that you embraced more than others, like certain moments of, say, discouragement, as well as the epiphanies that immensely contributed to your career?
Okay, well, I'm going to start off by arguing with you, Manny.
Okay. God, man, this is... I'm serious. This is the best podcast yet, man. I'm getting a little ambivalence, a little rebuttal.
I am. I'm going to fight with you.
Go for it.
So here's my little thing, and I'm joking. But I am hesitant to say that I have quote unquote mastered drumming or mastered music, because for me that would imply that I've learned all that I need to learn.
Right. Well, you got to remember,
feel that way.
Not to cut you off, this is my interpretation. I see you out there. Listen, there's no lying and there's no denying. I'm looking at you on TV and the behind the scenes footage. I'm like, that's not him. That's a robot. Guys, look at me. That's a robot. That's not a real man. So no, I completely get it. I get it.
Yeah. But I understand what you're saying as well. But yes, I just think to myself, when I think of master, because I love kung fu movies, I think of the kung fu movie masters, and they're basically masters because no one can defeat them.
Right, of
course. I'm very defeatable.
You were in a field of multiple grasshoppers. I get it.
That said, challenges along the way, motivations, obstacles, hurdles. So let me start first with motivation, because that's actually what came first. So essentially I started playing drums when I was 5 years old. Well, more to the point, I started playing pots and pans when I was 5 years old. And then around 6 years old, I got a drum set. And I continued to play and play and play. And it was always something that I loved. In fact, the first instrument I had lessons on was piano. So it was always something that I loved. So at that point, I'm not certain where the motivation came from, because it would have been purely it would have been internal. It would have been something that just me just enjoying banging on pots and pans, or just me enjoying playing the piano, because I wasn't surrounded by music at that point, or surrounded by musicians at that point. Neither of my parents play a musical instrument. My father plays the radio. My father plays records nonstop, but he was not a musician himself. So
that's interesting.
Yeah. So for the early part of my life, my motivation was just enjoyment. I was a hyper kid, and playing drums was something that I could get that energy out. So as my life progressed, my path crossed with an instructor. This would have been 8th grade, 9th grade, something like that. So for the most part, I was self-taught up to my early teens, I'm guessing that would have been. And somewhere in that area, my path crossed with an instructor named Grant Menifee, who teaches privately in Catonsville, Maryland. So here we're leading up to our motivation part. So I'm loving playing. I'm playing with my friends in my high school, garage band. And somewhere along the line, Grant Menifee says to me, unprovoked or unprompted, says to me, I don't tell all of my guys this, but if you really worked your butt off and you really put your mind to it, and you really put the practice, into overdrive, you actually might be able to make a living doing this. And that was all it took. That was the motivation. That was the fuse lit, because at that point, up to that point, the idea of being a professional drummer wasn't even really on the radar.
Right.
You know what I mean? I saw guys in bands,
right.
But for the most part, the people that I saw in bands were guys that I would have seen locally playing at a restaurant. And I go up to them and I go, "Oh wow, do you do this full time?" And they laugh and go, "Oh no, I sell insurance."
This
so
little
that was
kid.
my idea.
Get out of here, kid. What do you know?
So Grant telling me you actually might be able to do this for a living, that was the motivation. Now, challenges. Obviously, saying that you want to be a professional musician to your parents, unless they're somewhat different parents, much of the time, if you tell your parent you want to be a professional musician, they look at you like,
I know where you're going with this one.
Which is funny. Yeah, it's funny because, I kind of always felt like somebody's got to do it.
Yeah. That whole hand to the head emoji comes to mind.
Yes,
I get it.
yes.
I get it.
And of course, my parents had envisioned me being a doctor or an engineer or something like this. So that was a challenge briefly, but I would say it's interesting. I would say the biggest challenge, and I'm going to quote a friend of mine. So, and this may not be the answer that you're looking for, Manny, but it's just what comes to mind. This is what the question brings to mind.
Right.
So many, many years ago, I was on tour, and I happened to be in LA, and I happened to have a friend here named Tony DiAugustine, who is an outstanding drummer. And he and I were hanging out, and I was very much beginning my little path, and he was much further along the path. And I said, Tony, I think I mentioned it, but if I didn't, he's a drummer as well. And I said, Tony, what's the hardest thing? What's the biggest challenge to being a professional musician? And in my head, I wanted him to say, meeting a manager, or, getting in enough practice, or, developing relationships with endorsers. And he said, the biggest challenge is balance.
Great
and
answer.
I said,
that's a great answer.
Balance. I've never forgotten it to this day. It's the best answer ever, because at the time I was like, balance? Like what? Balance between what? And Tony said, balance between everything. And at the time, I was just like, well, that's a stupid answer. Jesus, that doesn't help me.
I was just about to ask you, balance, like more specifically, what did he mean by balance?
Well,
it's interesting.
Right, exactly. Well, as the years have gone on, him answering that question in that way has become more and more profound.
Gotcha.
Balance between everything. Balance between doing the gigs that you love versus doing the gigs that pay the right amount of money. Balance between I'm working all the time, this is great, I'm on tour, versus I never see my family. Balance between, you know what I'm saying?
So it's like an all-inclusive answer about life. It's an all-encompassing thing. I gotcha.
He literally meant a balance between everything. And it really is that. It's family, and it's work, and it's money, and it's, and so it's almost like you want to try to achieve the right amount of all those things, So today, for example, today I'm doing a podcast with you. So this is This is professional. This is something fulfilling my professional life.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I'll hit the practice pad and try to work on my technical side. Maybe I'll get to that. And then later on, I'm taking my 9-year-old to the tennis courts. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So that's my family. So it's like
the opposite ends of the spectrum, but nonetheless, it's still part of the balance. Of course, it makes perfect sense.
And they're all equally important.
Sure.
They're really all equally important. Could I throw myself into practicing 8 hours a day and family be damned? I mean, yeah, but then family be gone.
Exactly. I'm glad you said it, man, because I was going to be like, no, I better not. Yeah, no, absolutely.
Sure. And I think that that's not an uncommon struggle. I think that, and I don't even think that it's particular to being a musician, but I do know several musicians for whom that has and continues to be a struggle. I am one of them. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
It's great that I'm working 7 days a week this week on The Voice because I have employment. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
But I haven't gotten to sit down and have lunch with my 9-year-old now. She turned 9 yesterday. My daughter.
Listen, I could definitely attest to that because I remember being at the, on site and I'm like, oh my God, these are long days. And, we finally invite the family and they're like, how do you guys do this? This is like a 15, 16-hour days. I'm like, that's nothing. Then we got to go back to the room, prepare for the following performance. So I can only imagine, if you're not prepared mentally, physically, emotionally, this could be a really daunting task, 100%.
Completely. So that would be the biggest challenge. So my motivation came from Grant telling me, hey, you just might be able to make a living at this. And that was the start. And there've been
do you still talk to Grant? I got to ask.
Yes. Constantly.
Wow, that's great. That's
great. Regularly. Yes, regularly. Sometimes he'll call Grant. So I'm extremely happy for the reciprocation that I've been able to give Grant. I'm extremely happy that I can chat to you and I can, say his name and put what he does out there.
Of course.
Matt Halpern is another former student of Grant's. John Theodore is a student of Grant's. Who am I leaving out? Mike Reed is a student of Grant's. Mike Reed plays with Janet Jackson and all of these, folks. So it's really fun because I think about like great instructors when I was growing up and like everybody knew Gary Chafee. Because he had so many great drummers out there that were saying like, oh, I studied with Gary Chafee. And so I used to fantasize like one day I'll be able to do that for Grant. One day I'll be able to be like a known guy and say I studied with Grant. And so, he calls me regularly. We chat about lots of things, sometimes music, sometimes just life.
I just think that's really noble of you because, you always try to give back anyway to those that have provided knowledge or at least an impetus to keep this career going. And that's great of you to do that because, the world goes around and whatever you put in, you're going to get back. And it's true. The element of reciprocation in a situation like that is huge. And I'm sure he's completely beyond elated of your successes.
Well, I mean, he and I both.
Tell me about it.
I mean, and the thing too is I'm going to get kind of in the weeds a little bit here, but my father is an educator. He's a lifelong educator. I used to call him Mr. Academia. My dad, I'll tell you really briefly about my dad and my mom as well. She started out as a substitute teacher, although that's not what she ended up doing for the length of her career. But my dad, started out as a teacher. Actually, even before that. So my father completed college. He got a degree in, what's his undergrad? I don't even remember his undergrad, but my father has an undergrad degree, if I'm not mistaken, 2 master's degrees and a PhD, and then actually did what's called a postdoctoral study. I told you I'm getting in the weeds.
So he's like a walking brain, essentially.
Postdoctoral study. I told you we call him Mr. Academia. He did a postdoctoral study at Harvard University. This is several years ago. My father is now retired, but then he worked in college administration forever and ever and ever. And so education is kind of in my DNA, right?
Sure.
By the way, postdoctoral study, for anyone who is unfamiliar, is exactly what it sounds like. It's like you've got a doctorate degree, you've gone to school for all these years, you could wallpaper your house with the degrees that you have, but you still want to go to more school? Here's a postdoctoral
Thank you for clarifying that, Illness. Yes, absolutely.
Yes. I told him a postdoc is postdoc is school for people who have run out of all the school that there is.
Right, of course.
Right? So anyway, so as I said, I enjoy teaching. So bring that back around. I enjoy teaching. I also take teaching very seriously. I can also look back at my life and point out teachers that were not good. I can look at teachers in my history, and I'm not just talking music. I'm talking high school period.
Mm-hmm.
I can look back and I can point out that's not a good teacher. That person
Yeah.
shouldn't have been there.
Yeah. And you always remember those too. You always, they're
Correct.
at the forefront of your list. Absolutely.
Correct. Well, the flip side of that is the very, very, very exceptional
Mhm.
teachers also stick out in my head,
Right.
of which Grant was one. And so that's why it's so important for me to get to talk about him whenever anyone asks me about my sort of path. It's important to me to point that out, because there are bad teachers,
Mhm.
and then there's guys like Grant who are great.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I'm going to reel you back because I know you're out in the weeds,
sure,
but I definitely want to reel
do
you
it.
back because I'm sure there's tons of drummers out there. I know as a former drummer myself, certain questions, and I know you've toured with some serious icons, man, and rightfully so, because it's evident. Uh, um, like one of the things I wanted to ask you and focus on, like, are there certain, like, I don't know, drum fills, playing different genres to heighten your chances, rudiments? Is there certain things that they should be focusing on now? There's got to be like a master checklist of sorts for Nate Morton, like before a show, or should I practice this more because they're going to benefit you more in your style or your career in general?
Sure. My heroes
Mm.
were guys who I felt like you could drop that guy on any gig
Mm-hmm.
and they'd kill it. Right. So the two guys that spring to mind, which are two of the four drummers on my Rushmore, are Vinny Colaiuta and Omar Hakim. And I felt that way about both of those guys. I felt that both of those guys were very much Swiss Army knife type drummers. Like you could whip them
I
out
like
on any
that.
kind of gig. They
I
they
like
had the
that.
tool. Whatever needed to be fixed, they had the
Right.
tool.
Right.
And I always wanted to be that. So the end result is, when I went to Berkeley, I literally chose certain instructors that I wanted for particular things that I wanted to learn to add into my groove vocabulary or my, genre vocabulary.
Mm-hmm.
And sort of I was fortunate that also in that environment, I was playing with a lot of different bands, primarily cover bands, but I was playing with a calypso band that did weddings, but I was also playing with a hard rock band that did, rock clubs,
Mm-hmm.
and at the same time, I was playing the Tuesday and Sunday morning jazz brunches on the little Boston Harbor
Oh, you got to do
brunch
those. Those are a
cruise.
must, of
You know what I mean?
course.
Right. So you combine all that stuff with my mentality, and also somewhere very early in my professional career, I'll call it, or in pursuit of my professional career, someone said, listen to as much music as you can,
Right.
play as much music as you possibly can across as many genres with as many different people as you can. And so that's always been what I've gone for.
I agree with you 100%. I actually did a whole segment on just that. It's helped me as a singer. You know me, I'm bilingual. So I listen to everything. And I grew up on a steady dose of the Beatles, country folk music,
Sure.
Mamas and the Papas, Julio Iglesias, all that stuff. And I realize now in trying to have a good heartfelt dialogue with producers that I hear things that are differently. So if you're stuck in one particular genre, then you're just enclosed in that. You don't really have the potential of hearing anything else. But if you're stuck at this one point, and then all of a sudden you think of a riff that you heard, I don't know, on a salsa album, like a nice little cumbia riff, you're like, oh, you salvage the moment. Had you not listened to that, you'd run into a dead end. I think it's helped
Well,
me.
and I'm fortunate. I'm fortunate that I had instructors who preached that. I had an instructor at Berkeley. I'll tell you this briefly. I know you're trying to pull me into the boat.
No,
I'm
this
trying
is
to
great
I'm
because
trying to swim away.
I think it leads into stories there. No, I think this is great because these are the things this is what happens, people. This is what happens in real life. You get pulled in different directions. You get inspired by just a random comment, and then you start learning different genres and meeting new people. So this is great that you're actually identifying with that because it's part of the process.
Sure. Well, Ian Froman, who I studied with at Berkeley for I think a semester, maybe
Mm,
two,
mm,
once said to me, so one of our earlier lessons, one of our first lessons, and Ian is a primarily jazz instructor, because I wanted to study with him because I wanted to sort of get into that. And he also had a reputation around the campus of being sort of on the philosophical side. Like you might not learn this crazy lick, but he might say something that opens your mind up to something you had never thought of. So this happened to be one of those occasions.
mm.
Earlier lesson, I'm trading. He says, trade fours with yourself. So I'm playing 4 bars at a time, and I'm playing jazz. I'm playing spang, spangalang, spangalang.
Mm.
I'm playing traditional grip, and I'm trading fours with myself. And he stops me and he goes, what's that grip? And I go, what do you mean? And he said, what, do you have some, bizarre romantic notion that because you're playing jazz, you have to play traditional grip? And I was like, well, it sounds stupid when you say it out loud like that.
Yeah, right? Exactly. Well, thanks for pointing that out. I had no idea.
But that was the exact case. That was precisely the case. And I said to him, I was like, well, Ian, I feel like he basically immediately honed in on the fact that because I was playing jazz, I felt like, oh, I can only play
Yeah, of course.
I can't play a bottom lick. I can't play a rock.
Right,
and he basically said, man, he goes, look, if you're hearing it and you do it in a musical way, there's no reason you can't play a bottom lick on a jazz tune.
Sure, 100%.
Which at the time, I was whatever I was, 20 years old. That was like mind blown, right? And I realize that it seems simple now because I was surrounded. Think about it. I was surrounded by the quote unquote, I'm making air quotes here, the jazzers that I was surrounded by literally only listened to jazz. Like they didn't listen to anything else. And so that's all that they played when they played jazz. So anyway, yes, to your point, to our point.
What's that grip you got there? I wish I was a fly in the wall for that one.
Wait. I forgot the rest of the story. Wait. Yeah. So first of all, it was what's that grip? And then the romantic notion bit. And then he goes, your traditional I can't believe I almost forgot this. He goes, your traditional grip is an insult to guys who actually play traditional grip.
Ouch.
He goes, why don't you just tie your left hand behind your back?
Dude, he just dropped the anvil on you, man.
When someone says something like deliberately mean, like in a movie, they say something deliberately mean, and then they kind of do like a smirk to the camera.
Yeah. There's no mincing words. There's no mincing words.
Like he knew, and I just laughed. But again, it's moments like that. Like I can't tell you a single lick, fill, exercise song that I learned playing with Ian. But it's moments like that were actually as influential, if not more so, than so many books of exercises and fills and things of that nature. So yes, to our point, the more that you can open yourself up and allow yourself to experience as many different genres and styles, the better.
No, that's
and
great.
that's what I was going for. No,
and it makes perfect sense. You literally drove the point home. Whatever grip you're using there, you did good. But you covered so many facets. You answered like 4 or 5 questions. This whole umbrella of questions that I had. So
I warned you, man.
That's fantastic. No, that's fantastic. I
warned you.
Well,
whenever anyone chats to me and I go, so how long are you gonna need? And they go, oh, we can wrap up in like half an hour. I'm like,
I just had no idea you'd be so elaborate, but also consolidating everything at the same time. So kudos to you on that ability on its own. So you know what? Then I'll just go to question number 4. This is the last question because the first 2 had to do with rudiments and technicalities. And then obviously the next one related to your life experiences. But this last one is just a trademark question of the show. And I ask it to everybody specifically because I get such interesting and such diverse answers, which is, what's your mojo, man? Like what keeps you riding that rhythm section and bringing that thunder upstage, day in and day out, aside from the obvious rush, of course. And balance.
Manny, I
sit back for this one or what?
Yeah, I mean, okay. If you haven't already gotten that impression by now.
No, man, I just should have brought more whiskey with me. That's the only thing. It's all good.
Well, that's funny that you mentioned that because normally if I were doing one of these at night, I would be having maybe a cocktail, whereas it's early in the day here for me. It's 11:30 in the morning. And so I'm still amping up for the day. So I'm having my rock star.
I got
I'm having a pure, what is this? Pure Zero silver ice flavor rock star.
Oh, great.
Yeah, and it says 240,000 milligrams of caffeine. No,
no, the guys here are pointing at me, and now they're doing the whole, the whole fingers across the neck.
No. Oh, the wrap it up. I'm getting to wrap it up.
Oh no, not at all. They're talking about when I bring out whiskey. That is no. You're good. You're good. You're good.
So go ahead. Playing me off.
Indulge me, man. Please tell me.
So here we go. My continued quote unquote mojo, my continued motivation, my continued drive is basically this. The drums that I play, Manny, are made of these complex, wood plies and shells and so on. The hardware is this technologically advanced hardware, and the heads are these certain plastic polymers, and they're this and they're that, and there's high tech, and there's all this going on. there's still pots and pans, and I'm still 5 years old, Manny.
I love it.
There's still
I was
pots and
waiting
pans.
for you to answer it some way, shape, or form. But yeah,
There's
I do.
still pots and pans.
Right.
They're pots and pans, you know.
Right.
And if you want to go even further back, like there's a very simplistic, like I hate to use this term because I don't want it to be misconstrued, but there's a very tribal, Neanderthal sort of caveman element to drums as well. Because if you want to go even further back than them being pots and pans, there's still logs, and I'm still playing them with sticks like a dang caveman.
Right.
And there's just something so I don't know if this is the right word, visceral about just whacking something with a stick. So the kid that was 5 banging on pots and pans, even further back, like way back, hundreds of years, thousands, however far back the friggin' Zoic era was.
Exactly. It's bad enough that when we were young, you know, pterodactyls were roaming the earth, so I can only imagine, of course.
Exactly. So that's it, man. That's it. It's just something that's just in my DNA. I'm still 5. Every time I sit down behind the kid, I still think to myself, I get to sit down and whack stuff with sticks for a job. That's ridiculous. So that's it.
I was a drummer before I did anything. Was a drummer. My dad bought me a 5-piece Premier drum set. I fell in love with it.
I do recall.
You know, and I got to tell you, I completely and honestly empathize with what you're saying. Not to mention, you get out frustrations. My brother-in-law, he's like, I don't know. I just want to buy a pair of drums because I want to beat the crap out of them. That's it. So whatever the case may be, I get it. But
well, it's a blessing, Manny. It's a blessing because speaking of, you said your brother-in-law and his frustrations and different things. You know, it's funny because when I work, and we're coming up on a break, let's say at the end of working for a stretch of 4 weeks, 5 weeks, however long. And everyone says, oh, what are you going to do on your time off? Where are you going to go? You're going to go on vacation? You're going to do whatever. And for me, on my time off, I go on staycations, which is I just stay at home and hang out with my family because I am blessed with, and I really am blessed, and I truly do realize how fortunate I am that my job, rather than causing stress, relieves it. Playing drums relieves stress. I agree, man. You know,
I agree.
So yeah, you wrap all that up. You wrap up the fact that it's a stress reliever. I'm still 5 years old. You know, I'm the 5-year-old embodiment of a caveman playing logs and pots and pans with sticks and salad spoons. And there you go.
I just, the one thing I do appreciate about you the most is, I keep up with you on social media, as I said before, but you never rest on your laurels. You're just somebody that's consistent and is always very boisterous, and energetic. And even in this conversation, you're very inviting. So I appreciate that. And that's just another lesson, if you're going to do anything in the music industry, it's always good to open up your mind, to be diverse, and to, above all,
I have a question.
Go ahead.
I have a question for you, Manny.
Please.
So when you're performing, does your energy, I feel like my energy feeds off of my surroundings, right? So if I come out there and I put it all out there, if the audience gives it back to me, then that inspires me to put it out there even furthermore.
Oh yeah.
And then it's kind of like a cyclical thing. Do you tend to agree?
I do, man. I mean, I always feed off the vibe of the audience. Oh my God.
Right.
And it kind of sets the tone too, because I know, not that I ever hold back, but I try to manage the crowd and I see how they're feeling because, you got to adjust because you don't want to be overbearing to take away from my vocal performance. But at the same time, you don't want to hold back and neglect that whole performance value that they're expecting. So it's kind of a double-edged sword, but 100% I feed off the crowd every single time.
Well,
I mean, I got nervous energy, always nervous energy. Like I always have to either do a shot or just meditate or something to that effect,
Well, the reason why I ask is because just in this chat that we're having, I'm just imagining if you and I were actually ever in a band together, the amount of kineticism, is that a word? Did I just make up a word?
You probably did.
Energy, maybe kinetic energy. Maybe that's what I should have said.
It's probably just ADD, if anything.
Pretty much.
Maybe ADD.
Pretty much. But I was just envisioning we would just have to play in venues that already had no roof. Otherwise, our collective hyper spasness would blow it off.
We cannot be contained. No, 100%, man. You know, I'm a rocker at heart, so you know me. I'm all about the fanfare and the explosions and the dynamics and the loud music. So yeah, I'll definitely uphold that theory, 100%. But listen,
right on.
you've been amazing. I'm beyond grateful that you offered so much information, so much passion, and let us delve into your life for a little bit, man. And I hope you enjoyed it.
You got it. I had a great time. You know, Manny, I always enjoy getting to do things like this because I find it humbling that anyone would think that I would have anything important to say. And so whenever I'm given an opportunity, I always take it, and I always do so.
No, you're awesome, man. And you know what? My dad, I lost him recently on December 1st to COVID. And one of the things that he said.
Oh, my goodness. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it's completely fine. It's been a rough loss for me, don't get me wrong. But the one thing that he always taught me was do the right thing, put your heart and soul into it, and don't worry about the end result. Because if you're kind to people and you work hard at what you do, you're going to reap the benefits when you least expect it. It'll just happen.
I can't follow that at all. I can't follow that with anything. That could not have been put better.
Yeah, well, it's not mine. I'm stealing it from my dad, which I love immensely, and I know this is my way of keeping his legacy alive. And I know that the opportunities that I get consistently to speak to musicians of your caliber is just a blessing, and I'm going to take it. I'm going to take the ball and run with it. If you guys give me the time, I'm going to grab it. So thank you so much, Nate, man. You've been amazing, and I wish you nothing but continued blessings and more success, and hopefully we'd be able to share the stage at one point. That'd be cool.
Same to you, Manny, and absolutely, man. That would be great. Thank you for having me. Thank you for sharing your platform with me and enabling me to sort of talk a little bit about everything.
All right, brother. You got it. Listen, much love. Take care of yourself.
Okay, buddy. You too. Bye-bye.
This has been a Mojo for Musicians podcast. If you're a musician, producer, engineer, or any other industry professional wanting to share your mojo and stories of success with our listeners, or just want to share some feedback on today's episode, we'd love to hear from you. So just send us an email at info@mannycabo.com. Thanks for listening.